KTAR Breaking News Alert.
I'm Jeff Munn in the KTAR News Center. As mentioned, President Biden about to make remarks concerning executive orders signed earlier today to control immigration at the border. We now take you to Washington, D.C. live.
It's been published widely by many of you that he didn't want to fix the issue. He wanted to use it to attack me. That's what he wanted to do. It was a cynical and an extremely cynical political move and a complete disservice to the American people who are looking for us to not to weaponize the border, but to fix it. Today, I'm joined by a bipartisan group of governors, members of Congress, mayors, law enforcement officials, most of whom live and work along the southern border. They know the border is not a political issue to be weaponized. The responsibility we have to share to do something about it. They don't have time for the games played in Washington, and neither do the American people. So today, I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border. Frankly, I would have preferred to address this issue through a bipartisan legislation because that's the only way to actually get the kind of system we have now that's broken, fixed, to hire more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more judges. But Republicans have left me with no choice. Today, I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. Migrants will be restricted from receiving asylum at our southern border unless they seek it after entering through an established lawful process. And those who seek to come to the United States legally, for example, by making an appointment and coming to a port of entry, asylum will still be available to them, still available. But if an individual chooses not to use our legal pathways, if they choose to come without permission and against the law, they'll be restricted from receiving asylum and staying in the United States. This action will help us gain control of our border, restore order into the process. This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage. We'll carry out this order consistent with all our responsibilities under international law, every one of them. In addition to this action, we recently made important reforms in our asylum system, more efficient and more secure reforms. The goal is to deliver decisions on asylum as quickly as possible. The quicker decision means that a migrant is less likely to pay a criminal smuggler thousands of dollars to take him on a dangerous journey, knowing that if in fact they move in the wrong direction, they returned around quickly. And 2 weeks ago, the Department of Justice started a new docket in the immigration courts to address cases where people who've recently crossed the border and they make a decision within 6 months rather than 6 years, because that's what happens now. Additionally, the Department of Homeland Security has proposed new rules to allow federal law enforcement to more quickly remove asylum seekers that have criminal convictions and remove them from the United States. My administration has also recently launched new efforts to go after criminal networks that profit from smuggling migrants to our border and incentivize people to give tips to law enforcement, provide information that brings smugglers to justice. We're also sending additional federal prosecutors to hotspots along the border and prosecute individuals who break our immigration laws. One other critical step that we will be taking, and that has made a huge difference. We continue to work closely with our Mexican neighbors instead of attacking Mexico. And it's worked. We've built a strong partnership of trust between the Mexican President López Obrador, and I'm going to do the same with the Mexican-elect president who I spoke with yesterday. We've chosen to work together with Mexico as an equal partner, and the facts are clear. Due to the arrangements that I've reached with President Obrador, the number of migrants coming and to our shared border unlawfully in recent months has dropped dramatically. But while these steps are important, they're not enough. To truly secure the border, we have to change our laws, and Congress needs to provide the necessary funding to hire 1,500 more border security agents, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backlog of cases, more than 2 million of them, 4,300 more asylum officers to make decisions in less than 6 months instead of 6 years, which is what it takes now, and around 100 more high-tech detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop fentanyl being smuggled into the United States. These investments were one of the primary reasons that the Border Patrol Union endorsed the bipartisan deal in the first place. And these investments are essential, remain essential. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not willing to spend the money to hire more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more judges, more high-tech machinery, you're just not serious about protecting our border. It's as simple as that. I believe that immigration has always been a lifeblood of America. We're constantly renewed by an infusion of people and new talent. The Statue of Liberty is not some relic of American history. It stands for who we are as the United States. So I will never demonize immigrants. I'll never refer to immigrants as poisoning the blood of a country. And further, I'll never separate children from their families at the border. I will not ban people from this country because of their religious beliefs. I will not use the U.S. military to go into neighborhoods all across the country to pull millions of people out of their homes and away from their families, to put detention camps while awaiting deportation, as my predecessor says he will do if he occupies his office again. On my very first day as president, I introduced a comprehensive immigration reform plan to fix our broken system, secure our border, provide a pathway for citizenship for dreamers, and a lot more. And I'm still fighting to get that done. But we must face the simple truth. To protect America as a land that welcomes immigrants, we must first secure the border and secure it now. The simple truth is, there is a worldwide migrant crisis. And if the United States doesn't secure our border, there's no limit to the number of people may try to come here, because there's no better place on the planet than the United States of America. For those who say the steps I've taken are too strict, I say to you that be patient. And goodwill of American people are wearing thin right now. Doing nothing is not an option. We have to act. We must act consistent with both our law and our values as Americans. I'll take these steps today, not to walk away from who we are as Americans, but to make sure we preserve who we are for future generations to come. Today, I've spoken about what we need to do to secure the border. In the weeks ahead, and I mean the weeks ahead, I'll speak to how we can make our immigration system more fair and more just. Let's fix the problem and stop fighting about it. I'm doing my part. We're doing our part. Congressional Republicans should do their part. Thank you very much.
All right, you've been listening to President Biden as he talks about executive action that will restrict asylum at the ports of entry for people that are entering the country. Now, he said illegally, his word, not mine, that it's going to restrict people that are entering anywhere except the port of entry for asylum. They have to make an appointment on the app. So we're going to talk more about this in the coming few moments and some other commentary about the politics of this, because I'm entering into politics only because he mentioned a number of times his opponent in the election, what would have happened, what's going to happen, what he's done since he's president, what he wants to do. So that is a big part of this discussion. Will this be effective? Will this be an effective way of doing things? Will this motivate the Congress to get something done? All right, the president has spoken on his piece of executive order that he is going to be signing. I want you to hear a little bit, if you missed it, I want you to hear a little bit of what the president had to say. He talks about preferring legislation.
I would have preferred to address this issue through bipartisan legislation, because that's the only way to actually get the kind of system we have now that's broken fixed, to hire more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more judges. But Republicans have left me no choice.
Again, I think it's a mistake. We're going to talk politics because he injected politics into this. We'll talk validity, we'll talk viability and whether or not this is going to work, but he put politics in this. Republican, he actually used the words Republican obstruction. Republicans didn't obstruct anything. This is ridiculous. When you bring out I want someone to think of a piece of legislation, and I may be wrong. There might be some out there recently that are out there that are big deals, not some obscure thing. But when was the last time there was a big issue in America where we ended up coming to a conclusion that didn't start out with disagreement? Name one. Name one time the Republicans came up with a piece of legislation that didn't have some kind of revision and pushback where it was negotiated and fixed and eventually agreed upon. Name one. So the idea that this bipartisan piece of legislation that was partially crafted by independent Senator Sinema didn't make it to the Senate floor and therefore Republicans don't want to fix things is an absolute joke, even for Democrats. You know that this is nothing but a grasping at straws when this issue is horrible for the President of the United States. So you're going to inject politics and call this Republican obstructionism. No, it wasn't. It was a refusal to go along with something they didn't agree with. The president alluded to the fact that the Border Patrol Union, Brandon Judd's organization that represents the rank and file Border Patrol, endorsed that piece of legislation. Brandon Judd came on this show and said that it's a good starting point, but there are a lot of terrible things in it that they need to get to the floor and debate and get rid of. And if those things weren't excluded, they wouldn't have supported it. They supported it as a starting point. Again, I don't expect everybody to agree. There are many people that think that that version sort of got into the floor for debate, and then get amendments on there and fight for amendments. It didn't. So then what they did was they resurrected the same bill a few weeks later and said the same thing before it started. Chuck Schumer came out and ridiculed Republicans as if that was somehow going to motivate them to get on board with trying to fix something. It didn't. That's the politics of this. So here's the order. Here's what he said is in the executive order.
Today, I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. Migrants will be restricted from receiving asylum at our southern border unless they seek it after entering through an established lawful process. And those who seek to come to the United States legally, for example, by making an appointment and coming to a port of entry, asylum will still be available to them.
So this is my question on this. I want you to, as an American, you mean to tell me that you needed an executive order to say that unless you enter through a lawful port of entry, we're not going to allow you to apply for asylum? Shouldn't that be a given? Again, is that not the minimum? This is how far we've deteriorated on the border. We have been telling people, come to the port of entry, make an appointment on the app. But if you don't, if you walk around the fence, if you walk a few miles down the road and you enter illegally outside of a port of entry, you're going to get the same treatment as someone that goes through a port of entry. And you're eventually going to get the same treatment as the people that apply for a visa in another country. They come here legally, they go through the visa process, they go through the green card process, they go through the naturalization process, they take the test, they spend the money, they pass the background check, they become citizens. We're all going to be treated the same up until today. The crackdown is if you come outside of a port of entry, you're no longer going to be allowed an asylum claim. Doesn't that sound like that should be the bare minimum anyway? I don't, and this is because I am someone who is so in favor of legal immigration. This is absurd that we're doing this. So now what happens? What happens if they break the law?
But if an individual chooses not to use our legal pathways, if they choose to come without permission and against the law, they'll be restricted from receiving asylum and staying in the United States.
I'm a little frustrated because that doesn't seem to me to be, how is this new? I would venture to say that when you break this apart, that there are many Americans that would have believed that this was already the law. So now he goes on to talk about order.
This action will help us gain control of our border, restore order into the process. This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage.
We've had millions of people come here in the last 3 years. We have 500,000 unaccompanied minors that have crossed our border. The fact that this is happening now, I would say it's too little. It's never too late. It is about time. I don't understand. I really don't understand how anybody that isn't already convinced. Again, we've drawn sides. I know that there are people that are listening now that absolutely disagree with me, and they think that the president's been doing a fine job on the border, and that it's just circumstances that have made it as bad as it is, and many of them somehow find a way in their mind to blame it on the previous administration for what's happening now. Those people will never be convinced. But there are a lot of people that just see problems for what they are. And that is, we have got this huge number of people that are coming into this country illegally. It is draining the system. It is distracting the system. It is breaking the system. And it should have stopped a long time ago. These executive orders could have been done 2 years ago, and they haven't been. So how is it that you're going to convince the American people that this isn't just a complete Hail Mary 6 months from an election, less than 6 months from an election? How is this not a Hail Mary to save your campaign? Because all he has to do is improve in a number 1%. Let's be honest. Let's be honest what this is. Because of the former president's legal troubles, because of the conviction that just happened to the former president, because a number of independent voters are looking for a reason to not vote for Donald Trump, all President Biden has to do is just move the needle 1%, and it could be all the difference in the world in swing states. I don't think Arizona. I think he's going to lose Arizona. But in other places, he may win. So all he needs to do is convince 1% of the people that he's doing something. But how does the average person look at this and not say, this is so obviously a maneuver in your political campaign? You start this whole conversation off by talking about, and I want you to hear him, this is him going after the former president.
So I will never demonize immigrants. I'll never refer to immigrants as poisoning the blood of a country. And further, I'll never separate children from their families at the border. I will not ban people from this country because of their religious beliefs. I will not use the U.S. military to go into neighborhoods all across the country to pull millions of people out of their homes and away from their families, to put detention camps while awaiting deportation, as my predecessor says he will do if he occupies his office again.
You know, this is the other part of it. I'm frustrated in a way because this whole conversation gets to be caught up in a defense of one or the other. This has nothing to do with one or the other. You brought up children and being separated from families. I want everybody out there, and I don't care who the president is, we have in this country 500,000 unaccompanied minors that have come in this recent wave. These are young people, obviously, that have crossed the border without any family members. And they've been given to sponsor families in some cases. About 20% of those kids are unaccounted for. We don't know who they're with. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know if they're in school. We don't know if they're in labor camps. We don't know if they've been sex trafficked. We don't know. We have no clue. And the number is somewhere in the neighborhood of between 80 and 100,000. Do you believe that's an acceptable number? This is happening under this president's watch. And do I think this president has no concern for children? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you're going after the former president and your children is part of it, separated families. You do separate families. They do separate families. This is how this works. This is such a frustrating commentary. If you right now are driving in your car and you've been drinking and you've got children in the car, first of all, you're an idiot. But you are going to get pulled over and you're going to get arrested for a DUI, and your children will be separated from you. And you will they will either go with a family member or they will go into state custody until a family member can be reached. It's the exact same thing, a misdemeanor charge where parents are separated from their children for breaking the law. It is an absolute emotional tug with absolutely no basis in fact.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.